Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Yeah, you sound great.
Fantastic. I know. I had this on when I took the kids to school, so I was like, I'm just going to keep it on.
Yeah, I get so many
Gotta
people
represent.
that tell me, like, they'll text me and like, hey, I got so many compliments on your shirt today.
Dude, everywhere I go, when I wear this in public, someone asks me where I got it. Like, no
you kidding
bullshit.
me?
Like, at all. No. Like, I'm
That's
being
great because like
100%
0 people ever
serious.
actually buy that shirt. Like whenever I
Oh, yeah.
created
people
those.
People don't want to spend money on things. They just want it.
Yeah. Well, we're recording, so we're either going to have to edit this out or let's just get going and we'll leave it in. I don't know.
Maybe what it be.
Yes, that's going to make our lives much easier. So, well, thanks everyone for joining us. So just a quick recap. If you didn't watch the intro video, welcome to UX Weekly. This is a podcast pertaining to really kind of all things design. Yeah, it's called UX Weekly, but I think experiences, everything has an experience associated with it. So we're going to keep it broad. So let's see. Yeah, that's it in terms of like the welcome. Thanks again for everyone.
Who are you?
Who am I? Yeah, I'm Stephen Ray, and this is
I'm Ray Hernandez. We're
Sweet.
old, and we've been in the design industry forever, like 20 plus years. So, and we're homies, and obviously we always talk about products and design, and we run teams and help people, kind of grow their careers. So it's like, it only made sense that why don't we just start recording this and hopefully try to help some people and have some cool conversations with people and, make it fun.
Good call.
Cool.
Good call on reminding everyone what we're actually doing.
Just in case they didn't look at every single video we've ever made,
There's only one, but good point. I think at a certain, after time goes by, people will kind of figure it out. But okay, but thanks to everyone who liked the Instagram post and all that, and has actually come and already subscribed. By the way, if you don't mind, subscribe to this. It's going to help us unlock some features that we'd love to have. But we're going to quit wasting time on this nonsense that we know you don't all care about. One other thing that I do think is worth mentioning that is funny is the Ray was looking at the stats for the video. I think it was an 8-minute video, and basically everybody watched, 1 minute?
2 minutes and 13 seconds was the average. So
All right.
They got a quarter. So pretty much they listen
actually,
to us ramble at the beginning and don't get to the part where we're actually talking about the thing. So
yeah,
it is
cool.
what it is.
Hey, I don't mind. I actually did a little bit of research a few years back on the attention span that people have for videos. If you put them on like your website to explain something or whatever, hopefully it's a little bit different for this podcast. 2 minutes is really probably not going to cut it. They're already checking out. But when you're doing explainer videos and things like that on your website for a product, it is about 2 minutes. Sometimes, 3 is kind of this maximum amount of time. And so, I was working on a project where we had done these videos and they were all like 5 minutes, just felt like a good amount of time. And this was a few years back, but we basically just redid all of them and like chopped all those 5-minute videos up into little videos, and they actually performed pretty well. Like people would watch one and it was short enough that they'd be like, okay, I'm sort of interested. I'm going to watch another.
Yeah, I think 2 is the magic number in multiple ways, right? Like we're all goldfish and like it's like proven. So you have 2 seconds to get my attention, and then you've got about 2 minutes of my attention before I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, so
let's do an hour-long podcast. Perfect.
Let's do an hour-long podcast and let's just talk about the podcast. So, hey, but let's talk about the podcast a little bit. So we said we would keep you guys informed on the process in terms of like what we're doing to get this going, the things that we've had to think about and do and whatever. We've definitely had like video and audio issues, which we seem to be getting through slowly, but it's not going to stop us from going ahead and putting this out. So in terms of like our process, one of the things that we did decide is that we are going to have a pretty religious like schedule. So we're planning on posting one of these per week. The idea right now is that we're, every other episode is just going to be me and Ray, and the alternating episodes are going to be with guests. And we do have a handful of really cool guests already lined up, so we're pretty excited about that. One of the things Ray usually, kind of chimes in with is that we are definitely going to be changing this as we. It's a work in progress, like on the fly. Fluid. That's right. So yeah, we're starting out with these ideas today. One, we're going to figure some stuff out. Two, we'd love your feedback and kind of telling us what you like, what you want to see that you're not, what you're seeing that you don't want to see. We're not going to spend a ton of time talking about the podcast every time, but we are going to kind of keep you guys updated on
it's
anything
the first
that we find
episode.
interesting.
You kind of like, if you started here, it's like you kind of have to know. It's like, but
Yeah,
just so
everybody's
you
our
know,
friend.
like that since design and UX and everything is so generic, it's like we're going to talk about, it's like what it's like to run a team, like what it's like to like how to like move up in your career, like how we approach building products, because we do it all differently. It's like if you want to do a startup, what's the first thing to do? It's like there's so many things we want to talk about, and so many people want to learn from. So, it is what it is.
It is. And one of the things I thought
third or fourth time I've said that, I feel like already.
It is what it is.
Yeah, I feel like that's
okay.
I made my tagline already.
Well, so I have a pretty bad habit of saying, it's like my filler word. So my wife was basically like, hey, are you going to practice? And, you're going to be putting this out in the public. I was like, no. And so she brought that up. She was like, you say, a lot. And I was like, yeah, I know. So I basically
mine
decided.
is, the thing of it is, and I do the double is. I say that all the time. So anyway,
it is
catch
what it
me,
is. The
yell
thing
at me
of it
when I
is,
say
is
it.
you're a big
thing
is person.
I'm an iser.
So what we're going to have to do is basically create a threshold in which if we say these things a certain amount of times, we have to donate to a charity of some sort.
No, it's a drinking game for everybody else.
Oh, yeah, for everyone else.
Yeah,
That's a
or
good
for
idea.
us too. Yeah, I mean that works.
Bad
I'll
idea.
drink when you say it. That's fine.
Well, hey, one of the things I thought would be interesting to chat briefly on is we'll probably talk a lot about this on lots of episodes in the future, but kind of this idea of like the MVP, launching something versus getting everything perfected. One of the things that you kind of pushed was the cover art. So, the old me as at one point in my life, I was a fashion photographer. So, I have the lights, I have the backgrounds, I have all that stuff. And that was kind of in my head. I was like, yeah, we need to get headshots. I mean, I had kind of an idea that you and I sort of bounced off of each other. And you were like, well, look, your wall is black already. Let's just do it here. We'll just do it with your iPhone. So what we ended up doing, if you go to our Instagram, you'll see the cover art that we're going to be using on a lot of these posts or something similar. But basically, we shot that in my office against a black wall with an iPhone. We did use a light that I have, but it wasn't like a photography light. It was just this little LED light. We used a piece of paper to diffuse the light. We weren't put together. Ray was wearing a black T-shirt.
I didn't even know we were taking photos. Literally, I don't think I even showered that day. So if it looks that way in the photo, that's why.
Dude, it looks great. And then we threw that shit in Photoshop and just banged it out really quick. And I
feel like just saying
good.
that makes us sound old. I threw it in Photoshop. I feel like kids don't use Photoshop anymore.
Yeah, I don't know how else to do that kind of stuff. So,
but you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like
totally
because my designers
like
on my team would have been like,
of,
you use Photoshop? The MS Paint maybe next, So anyway,
I don't know. But you're right.
But I mean,
I get it.
I think we're gonna help each other out because I feel like you are more put together and think about things in a much grander, scalable way, and I'm very much a budget. How can we do this for free right now and do it kind of ghetto, and we'll use our design skills to make it look like it's professional. And I think we balance each other out. So even down to the artwork, but don't go to the Instagram to see it. Like they need to go to the YouTube channel to see it. because it's like somewhere on the page, like for our
that's just the
channel
logo.
cover art.
Oh yeah, it will be. I guess I should probably replace the logo with our
Exactly.
cover art. Okay, cool. All right, so let's get into some shit here. You know, like I said, we've got guests coming. I don't know. We talked about that, but one of the things that, you and I did kind of post out to a small group of people, just like, hey, what's some stuff that would be interesting to talk about? And I think more than one person mentioned, it'd be an interesting discussion, to have around, going to school versus not going to school and, getting on the job experience as a user experience designer. I know, so you didn't go to school,
I did not.
design. I actually went to an art school. Well, yeah, right. You went to high school though.
I did go to high school. That was fun. High school was fun.
Yeah. I did go to an art school. I went to, the Art Institute. And it was cool. But then I think, there's also people that go to like, schools like, hey, there's a lot of, and look, I know nothing about schools. The Art Institute was barely a freaking school. It became accredited like while I was there. And then in fact, they've like shut down. But, like SMU, which is, if you're in Texas listening to this, you probably have heard of SMU. I mean, it's, a popular school. That sounds so lame. It's a great school from what I understand. I haven't gone there, but they do have a, design program now and I think a product specific or user experience design program now. And from what I hear, it's good. The people that I know that have been involved in it from a professor standpoint or whatever are all smart people. So I think those are three different categories, of like what from not going to design school at all or school at all to going to.
There's a fourth.
What's the fourth one?
Like just online trade, like take courses.
That's a great point. Yeah. Well, so when this, we haven't talked about this yet because we wanted to save it for, this podcast, but one of the things that popped in my head was, first, I know you're one of my closest friends. You have kicked ass and you didn't go to design school. So do you have to? Like, absolutely not. I didn't even really think about, I had fun. I did learn some things. I learned more, after getting out of school, but I learned how to I didn't even have an email when I started school. I'm not sure about you, but I didn't even really use a computer.
So my story is totally bonkers, I think, but oh yeah, I was always an artist, right? Like since I was like a little kid.
Same,
and
we both have that in common.
Yeah, and in high school, I took AP art classes and did all that fun stuff. And I was just telling the story to a buddy yesterday. My art teacher, my junior year of high school, so I'm 17, was like, hey, Hockaday, an all-girls school, is giving a course on Photoshop this weekend and next weekend. Would you like to go? The school will let you go and pay for it. And I was like, yeah, sure. I don't know what that is. Sounds awesome. I'll take any free random thing that you'd like to give me. And so I ended up going to this all-girls school for 2 weeks and then over the weekends. And I learned Photoshop. And it was that was my first,
that's awesome.
Intro to anything that was design that wasn't just fine art.
Wait,
right?
So how did they pick you? They knew you were a good artist.
I was the president of the art club.
Nice, bro.
Yeah. So I was fancy.
Why isn't that on your LinkedIn?
Fancy. I think I'm going to change it. I actually have our a t-shirt that we made that is literally the farmer and his wife, but it's our principal and our vice principal. I still have it. Nice. It was our art club shirt. Anyway, so I learned Photoshop when I was 17 and I kind of just dive into things and randomly a friend of mine, brother was a designer at a design firm. And I don't even know if I've told you this
the Rare Medium story, right?
This part of this story though. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he was a designer at this design firm in Dallas called Rare Medium. Right. And so I'm like, hey, can I talk to your brother? What's a designer? I want to be a designer. I like art, I know Photoshop now, kind of thing. And at the same time, his friend named Raul was actually, my mom cut hair. He was getting his hair cut from my mom. And my mom was telling him about how I just learned like Photoshop and how to do design, and I want to be a designer and all this. So he gave her his business card and was like, have him call me. And so two guys that know each other that worked at the same design agency randomly, two different ways, got in contact with me. And since, one was my friend's brother, he was like, you don't look like a piece of shit. Yeah, I'll help you out. And he was like, I don't promise you anything, but I think if you're good enough, we could get you an internship. Look, where's your portfolio? I was like, what's a portfolio? And so he's like, oh, okay, we're at that level. And he's like, this is what I want you to do. I want you to redesign this site. I want you to come up with a movie poster. And then I want you to, I forget what the third one is. There was a third one. I think it was a packaging, right? Like just to show like all like digital, web, this thing and that thing, right? And so I was like, awesome. So I go home and I do it, and like I work on it, and I do it all wrong. Like it looked cool, but like I had to make like the file was like 8,000 by 8,000 at 500 DPI, because I'm like, oh, it's got to be super high res or it's gonna be garbage.
Classic
so anyway,
rookie mistake.
I make a thing. I take it to him. He's like, this is really good. I'm actually surprised. So obviously he had a very low bar for me. And he actually took me up to Rare Medium at night and was like, he print off all my stuff for me on like their like crazy laser printer. And that became my portfolio. Then he was like, all right, we're going to set up an interview for you in a couple of weeks. So when you tell me that, I'm like, it's in the books. In 2 weeks, I will be here. So a week goes by, I go to call him, no response. I email him, no response. And 2 weeks is coming up, so it's a Friday, right? So that Friday is 2 weeks. So that Friday, I just get in the car and I drive there. And I'm just like acting like I have an interview scheduled.
Dude, so proactive.
Dude, I walk in the door and I was like, yeah, I have an interview with Ben and the creative director. Like, I don't even know who it is. And they were like, okay. So they go and get him, and he's like, what are you doing here? I was like, you said I had an interview in 2 weeks. Here I am. He's like, oh, well, I meant like I was going to set it up for you, but I mean, you're here. So let me go see who I can get. And he gets the creative director and pretty much the entire design team in a room, and they go through my stuff. They give me some notes, and they basically hire me. And they were like, hey, we don't actually have a design internship, but we do have a marketing internship. Would you be willing to do that? I was like, you're going to pay me, right? And they were like, yes. And so they did. So I got an internship at 17, and instead of going to college, I just kept working there, and it was crazy. Because I don't think, even though it's like we know each other forever, I don't think you know this. Like, so the first job they ever gave me was, this was in 1998. And, it's like UX research is like a thing now. It wasn't a thing.
In 98? Oh, right. I was going to say.
So there, they actually had a UX design research team. And it was like the first of its kind. It was like the newest thing, right? And all that really meant was they do interviews, right? But we're talking 98. There's no phone.
Did they call it anything. UX?
Yeah. It was called the UX design research team. It was like, wow. And they literally would like with a microphone go like, hey, like it was like an infomercial. What do you think about that product? Can you tell me everything? What are you seeing right now? Like, what do you wish it did? And so there are all these audio recordings of basically people bitching about things, right? And my first job, which sounds so horrible, and it was at the time, but it's probably the most valuable, was I had to sit there and listen to the recordings, retype everything out, and pull out notes to
transcribing full conversations
to give to the design team. And I had to not just transcribe the whole conversation, but I had to listen for like those nuggets of like, if it was like this, it'd be so much better. And so I was literally learning. And so the whole point of this whole story is like that horrible job made me go from at 17, design is art to no, design is figuring out things that make people happy, because all these people were so unhappy and all they wanted was this one thing. And then we're like, well, if you just gave them that one thing, they'd be happy. And so switching from art to making things for people was like an instant, like, this is my first lesson in design. Right. And so like, yeah, so it went from horrible job. I'm doing marketing. I'm doing like PowerPoint presentations. And then one of the designers that was in that first interview, like, this is like maybe a month or so in, he walks by me. He's like, so what do they got you working on? I was like, oh, I'm transcribing all this audio. And he's like, are you fucking joking? Like, he was like angry, and he was like, come with me. And so I'm like, okay. I get up and like we walk into the creative director's office, and like, he's like, do you know what they have him doing? Like, we just brought, like, we have young talent here that like we could grow, and they have him over there just typing out scripts. Like, is this, what's happening? And her response was, well, sounds like you want to take him under your wing, so have at it. And he was like, fine, I will.
Told me this part.
And so, yeah, so then he just kind of taught me everything. This is like, it's super dating myself, but it was like during the Flash intro days and like all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah,
he taught me how to do everything.
Yeah.
And so it was like, that was my college. Those 2 years from my junior and senior year of high school, essentially working part-time at a design firm, was my college.
That's badass.
And I learned everything. Like, I worked on GM's website. I worked on Betty Crocker's website. I worked on like all of these crazy brands. And like, I'm like 17, you know, it's like, I hope I don't screw it up.
That's super cool.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah,
well,
it's like,
yeah, that kind of stuff can happen. I think one of the key takeaways for me is like, from your story, is how proactive you were. Like, that's what, man, I don't know if I was that proactive. I mean, I worked pretty hard to get like this scholarship that I got for school. So I don't know, maybe I don't know if mine was being proactive. I think it was like, I don't know what other alternative I have that's not going to suck. So like, go all in. But yeah, the fact that the guy said something and you showed up there 2 weeks later with your portfolio, like, if you hadn't have done that, you wouldn't have gotten that opportunity.
Yeah.
That's
I'd be a
badass.
landscaper or something.
Well,
right
so
now.
that just kind of goes to show landscaper, fucking badass landscaper,
just
though.
designing the sexiest trees you've ever seen.
So, I mean, that really goes to show you, like, you obviously don't have to go to school. One of the arguments that I would make for going to, you know, I mean, even the Art Institute, I don't think I maintained any of those relationships, to be honest. Well, actually, that's kind of how I met you, like, through mutual friends.
Yep.
But so, I mean, the networking is obviously a good thing. I think there's another, even more, there's another version of that, which is like, what the value that I find in going to some of these elite schools, which is not really even necessarily what you learn, but it's the network that you make early on. I think there's some value there, especially if you know people that are getting jobs at other places when you're starting your career. But then, like, when you have like even a more experience, you know, you've got a lot of experience and time under your belt, those networking relationships continue to grow, because now that person that was a designer when I was a designer is now an executive of a company that is willing to talk to me to potentially, like, for me to potentially sell them some business or something like that. But
so I see what you're saying. I'm still always going to call bullshit on it, because I feel like, in a way of, I have the same thing. I literally, like, after that internship, the .com bubble happened and everyone got fired, which sucked for everybody else, but it was awesome for me, because I had already made myself known as a junior designer, and all these people went to all these other places, and then they just started contract freelance work to me.
Well, it definitely happens, like, in the workplace.
Exactly. My point is
just another.
No, it's the same though. Like I remember working with people, and not even after that, like in some of the first jobs that I had, and the people that I worked with went on to, like, now they're like CEOs of like Expedia and stuff like that. And I have done that with my own startups. I hit them up. I'm like, hey man, it's been forever. Check this out, this thing that I'm working on. Maybe there's something we can do together. And it's turned into a bunch of projects and stuff for me. So it's like,
yeah,
it's, it's like, bullshit was the wrong word. I think there's other
very
alternatives. there's you can have the same type of relationships.
I hear what you're
growth,
saying.
Regardless of school.
And there's probably way better arguments that people could make than we are right now. But what I guess the only kind of thing that I think that adds is like expanding that network more quickly. I don't know. You get to know interesting people. I mean, you got to work at a place with a lot of interesting people. A lot of people you may not have had this experience. I guarantee you a lot of people have. Not everyone gets to go work at like a rare medium. Some of the similarities we have is that we're kind of hustlers or whatever, and we just like to do shit. And so I've had an opportunity to work at some cool places, and even the places that may have not have been as cool, like I made the most of it. And I don't know, there just were cool people there. I've known people that go to work at really shitty places where everybody there just sucks. And most of those people don't go off to go do anything cool. So I do think that in that case, relying on your network that maybe you made at school where you see somebody go off to somewhere cool, that might be your intro into a better spot. So maybe not worth the money for everybody. You and I are pretty social and I think wouldn't need it.
So, what's interesting?
I don't know.
Just the way you just said that actually made me think of something. And now I feel bad that I said bullshit. I'm not trying to say that that's stupid or it was bad.
Dude,
it's just
it was fine.
Just alternate version or way. So randomly, I work at a company that deals with data for automotive vehicles and tracking and predictive analysis and all this kind of stuff,
shit.
right? Yep. And randomly on Facebook yesterday, a guy I haven't seen him forever pops up as like, hey, you may know this person, right? I was like, oh, I haven't seen him forever. I click on his profile. He works at all of the same like auto industry places that are part of this industry and has for like 10 plus years. And I was like, motherfucker, like I need to hit him up. Like I was like, one, I haven't seen him forever. And two, it was like, like we're doing the same stuff, so I don't know.
That's always interesting.
So basically I sound like a total contradiction of myself. So exactly what
I like
said.
about you.
Yeah. That's how you define me.
Yeah. So let's move on. I mean, I think I would love to hear if anybody, is willing to like make any comments, write any comments, just what your thoughts on the value of going to school, defense of going to school or not, or
one other thing I'd add. So just because of my wife, I think that there are people that thrive in school, like that enjoy and really get more from a classroom environment and can ask questions and can grow and can like be part of that whole thing. So there are a totally different like brain, type of people than what I am. You know what I mean? So I 100% do not speak for everybody. It's more just, it's totally my personal opinion. And
I thought that was like a blanket sort of fact
that I speak for everybody.
Basically what you were saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, kind of, I know we said we're going to move on, but that point that you just made, I think is interesting because even, managing teams of designers, there's, this value. I just said, so there's one at least. That's probably number 5. There is this value. Well, for some people, they do need some direction. And there's this spectrum of like direction that's needed. Some people don't need any, and you're like, I would like to give you a little bit more direction. But I mean, sometimes they just don't need any. They're like, okay, here's everything I did. And you're like, okay, wow, I'm going to report to you someday. And some people, and it's not a bad thing, by the way. Some people are like, I just need to know what you expect. And I just need to know kind of like what direction I should go in. And once you kind of say like, hey, here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what I expect or whatever. Then they can bang it out. So I mean, like both, like neither one of those is bad necessarily. There's bad versions of both. But, so I kind of feel like when you're talking about even school, self-starter, I think people use it a lot and it's really negative, but sometimes self-starting is pretty hard, especially if you don't know where to start. So to your point, I think that, maybe there is a little bit of value in that being a specific piece of it that is like, I mean, for me, the first thing we did like in the first week was like set up email addresses and open up Photoshop. And you're like, I remember when I first opened Photoshop, I was like, I didn't know what to do even. So I was just like, there's the paintbrush. And like, had no idea. So that was definitely valuable for me. But I think you getting that on the job is like probably more valuable. But anyway, we don't need to rehash all that. I don't know. I think there's some interesting thoughts. I'd love if people commented, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no.
But
anyway.
Yeah. Why don't we move on? Well, so maybe this segues. I mean, we've got a couple of topics. Did you have one that you wanted to chat about specifically?
No. You tell
Okay.
me what to talk, and I just verbally vomit things out of my mouth.
Oh, nice. I'll give you some direction.
Yeah.
Well, so there was a comment that I saw on Twitter, and I'll post it in the notes below. But it said basically, and I'll open it up real quick so I'm reading it correctly. Basically, design can be just a job if you want it to be. And then he kind of does this like little thread. Says, I still like what I do, but I'm enjoying putting boundaries around the role it plays in my life. New for me. Not really trying to be the queen of hot take Twitter. Just thinking a lot of the things these days, and it's been validating that others are on the same page. This is, I'm going to mention this person. I don't know them. I just saw this post. Kyle Letendre, probably saying that wrong. It's Hey Kyle, hey. Hey, whatever. I'm trying. Giving this guy props because we're talking about his shit.
Anyway.
Whatever. So I
want you to go because I have a story. So you tell
right.
me. You tell me what you're thinking when you hear.
Well, I don't know. I mean, for me, my opinion on this might be changing. Like as of very recently, I never really. I wouldn't say never, but for the longest time, I was like not a fan of this whole like this work-life balance idea. I mean, it sounds cool, right? It sounds good. It's like, oh, you have you need to respect your personal life and boundaries, and then there's like there's work, and don't let work intrude on your personal life or whatever. I'm kind of looping you in here. Maybe you have a different opinion, but I have for the longest time felt like we've started companies. And so for me and you, like, it's like, well, this is my life and I actually quite enjoy it and I like it. There's not a cutoff time because my brain doesn't cut off. And also my wife has been kind of a part of my career. I mean, she knows what's going on. She's always kind of involved because, there's not a regular schedule. And shoot, even my son would spend time with me at the office or whatever. And he's like, oh, we're going to dad's office, not the home office, but the office. And so I would hear this term of it's really important, like work-life balance. I'm like, yeah, just like find the value in the work that you do. I do think that, and look, not everyone has the opportunities we've had. I do think some of that's probably based on skill. Up your skills and you have better opportunities. That's not always the case. I know sometimes it can, just be hard to find a great spot. But what I guess I'm getting at is that you shouldn't work at a place that's so shitty. I mean, we're talking about design right now. So we're talking about the field of design. I know that if you work at a freaking fast food restaurant, yeah, like when you check out of there, you don't need to be thinking of that shit at home, right? But that'd be weird or maybe awesome. I don't know. But in the field of doing something that you care about and you're passionate about, you shouldn't be doing that, something that you hate, and to the point where you're like, at 5 o'clock, I cut it off and I don't think about it until freaking 7 a.m. or whatever. But I'm starting to think that there's more value in that than I ever thought before, because, my kid, today's December 10th. He just turned 7 yesterday. And I do realize that, again, things are different for us being founders of companies and shit. But, I do look back sometimes and go like, man, I let all those 30-minute meetings consume my life and my calendar. And, once I stopped doing all those meetings, somebody there, well, once I stopped doing all these meetings, for example, when I pick my kid up from school, there's a park right by the house. And so I started just taking him to the park, or I was like, hey, what do you want to do? And he was like, hey, I want to go to the park. And getting to see that, and just chilling out. I ended up bringing one of those camping chairs or whatever and just letting him play as long as he wanted. And man, that was really it was like a shift in my opinion about this topic, because I love just seeing him play, and the fact that we didn't have to rush back to the house for me to jump on a meeting. Or if we did come back to the house when he's like, hey, come up and let's play for a minute. You know, I don't have to I can go play for a minute. I still may have to go get on the computer, but it's not like, sorry, my schedule is more important than our time together. So I don't know. That's been a new revelation in my life, but I'm curious. What's your story?
I have two. Actually, I don't even know if the other one matters now because you made me think of this. So it actually ties back to my first job thing too, right? So at 17 at this design agency, it was like I was shocked with how fucking cool like a workplace could be. You know, it's like my dad and then mom like grew up working hard, like outside, like, you know, oil and dirt on their hands kind of thing, right?
And the offices were always shitty.
And, yeah. Or if they even had an office, their office was
right.
like a car going to the workplace, you know, and it's like, for me, it was like this cool ass loft. I had like Herman Miller Aeron chair. I had 2 monitors before that was even a thing. You know, like there was like a full kitchen. Lunch was free every day. And this was my first job at 17. Right.
Dude,
and
awesome.
So, but it's like so spoiled, but it's almost like so normal now. But what it did was it set the bar. Right. So I remember at 17, I was like, I'll never work anywhere that has a dress code. Right. Like I remember saying that, like it's part of like when I do introductions and stuff now for work and things, I basically always say like, I don't own a suit and I never will. Like it's been in my rule since I was 17 that I'll never work anywhere with a dress code.
I'm getting
right?
in a suit.
Yeah.
Right.
But, yeah, it's just like, it sets the bar and then it turns into like, once you see like, that's what it is. And I remember too, like the higher ups, they were coming in at like 11, but then sometimes I'd be there really late at night and they'd still be there, you know? So it was like, you could tell like there was not this rigid 9 to 5. It was, you work
right.
and you get things done and you work whenever. Yeah. And so that led into when I, like right after that, I started my first freelance company, and I've had a freelance company for like 12 years. Like it's like most of my career has been my own. And to your point with like, you know, taking Essex and stuff to the park, I prioritized my life over the work, or really over my sleep. So what I would do is, no matter what was happening during the day, I wasn't working. I was going to like be present and be part of the day. Like if we're taking the kids out, if my wife wanted to go to dinner, if we're like doing whatever, like I'm all in. Like I'm doing nothing except for my life. And then I would just stay up all night and work like a whole shift when everyone went to bed.
Yeah.
And I just sleep a few hours and that was my day. And it was awesome until you get older and now you're like, okay, my brain hurts. It is tired. I cannot stay awake right now. But
I remember when you used to do that, and it was impressive. And because I was like kind of jealous, because I would see you just enjoying the day. But then like what I have a problem doing is like it being 11 o'clock and then turning on productivity for like 6 hours or even a few hours. But
it still happens to me. It happened to me the other night with you. Like I was literally writing you at 2 a.m.
Oh yeah.
Cause like I was like, ooh, well, I'm still awake. Everybody else is asleep. I'm going to do research on this podcast. Well, let's see what UX is on YouTube. Oh, who are the big players? Oh, how much traffic are they getting? Like I was doing like whatever you could do to like prep, and I was doing it all at 2 a.m. just cause I couldn't sleep. And so it's like my brain, it's like, if I'm awake, I'm working. Like, and so it's just interesting. I don't know.
What that makes me think of is maybe the big differentiator is the level of ownership you have in the thing that you're working on. You know, because I'm with you. I'm still like nonstop, but it's, you know, it's, I guess when it's for yourself, like right now it's for us, for this podcast or whatever, it is the middle of the night where you're like, I got a couple ideas. I'm going to go ahead and get, you know, bang some stuff out or whatever.
I agree with the first part, not the second part. I agree
I don't even know what two parts I made.
Because you said, you know, maybe it's You know, the fact that you're working on it for yourself and what you're working on. And because I remember working on things that I just hated, but the fact that it was my company, and if I didn't do a good job, they weren't going to repeat, and I wasn't going to get more. Right. And so just the whole idea of working for yourself and like, it puts this extra level of like quality and, you know, it's like,
it's your reputation.
It's like
it's your name.
It's almost like, it sounds super fucked up to say out loud. It's like, it's like less of a passion for the work and more of a passion for yourself. Right. And I think there's something to that. Where
What
it's
better
like,
motivator?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just like, it's like, I was thinking about this the other day too, because it's like, you know, in the design world, it's like, we spend all this time and we work on these things and like we put all of our effort and our love and our passion into it. And realistically, in 5-10 years, like that's just gone, and somebody else redid it, and now it's like a whole other thing, and just got thrown in the garbage, you know. And so that's why it's like it's more about me and my time and my family and my kids, and you know. But it's like, but then it's almost like a passion for the work, not the thing. If that makes any sense at all. Right? Like, I love making things. I love designing things. I love coming up with something new that nobody's ever done. But I might not necessarily like, you know, making, you know, random, you know, convenience store website. Well, I think that's
a very important mindset, especially if you're not working at a product company. If you're working at a consultancy or a design agency or whatever, I mean, yeah, you're going to lose all those projects in like, you know, typically months. You know, some projects, you know, for designers can go for, you know, years or whatever, but I don't think that's as common. And so you have to be okay, like doing something and handing it off and kind of like, I guess you have like a screenshot of the point in which you were like the proudest of or whatever. But like, I mean, we've all done this where it's like clients want to see real world examples of it. And you're like, well, it's changed now. And I'm not necessarily proud of like, what you're going to see in the real world, but here's what I did. Well, what was the second part?
Way better than what you did.
Oh, in which case I wouldn't say anything. I'd be like, there it is. Well, what was the part that you didn't agree with of that statement that I made?
Oh, because maybe I heard it wrong. I thought you were saying it's like,
I was probably just rambling.
The thing that you're working on was the part that I was disagreeing on. Like, because sometimes you're going to work on things that you don't love.
Oh yeah.
And that you're not passionate
so you made a great point, but I do still think that can make it easier to like, you know, if you're the owner of a product, then it's like, oh yeah, there's this great feature. It's like the shower ideas or the middle of the night ideas that you have to get up for that you don't feel bad about.
So,
whatever.
I mean,
I don't know.
That's my new thing. Cause it's like, I always have a million products I want to build and ideas like every day. And so
the idea, man.
So what I do is I write them on the board and
where's the board?
It's in my office.
Your office?
It's in my office. I have a whole whiteboard with just a list of all the products that I want to make. And when one comes to mind, I'll write it on the board. And what I do is I give it a time frame. And it's 6 months. I put it on there. And if I'm still thinking about it in 6 months, I do something with it.
I like that.
Because it's like, there's a lot of things where it's like in the moment, I'm like, this will be amazing. We're going to make a hamburger website that just sells hamburgers and it's going to be this, you know, and it'd be like, oh, nobody's ever done that before. And we're like, yeah, maybe because that's stupid and it won't make any money. But
people just like passion.
But it's to your point, it's a passion thing where it's like a passion has to last for a good amount of time for you to actually be able to make a successful product. If it's passion,
I feel like that's a product right there.
But you know what I'm saying?
Like, where you type in all your ideas and it reminds you like once a month, you still think this is cool.
Or like you rate it or something like that. No, dude.
Yeah.
Well, let's do that. I'm totally down to do that.
Cool.
That would be so simple.
I'll write that in our product ideas. I have a product ideas section here that I thought we could talk about. We're never going to remember this. I wrote passion project. We're going to be like, what does that even mean?
Everything. No, but.
Well, hey, dude, we're 45 minutes in. You want to talk about one more thing?
Whatever you want.
Dude, you got to fucking play a role here. Okay, let's do this.
No, I don't want to talk about it then.
Okay, whatever.
No, I would. My other monitor went to screensaver, so I don't see the document. That's the only reason. I didn't want to be like clickety clackety like on the thing, so I didn't log.
I feel like these all kind of like are related or lead into each other a little bit. Maybe not. But hey, and I'll post a link to this as well. I saw this LinkedIn post of someone that I'm not connected to, but you know how they all work now. If your friend comments on it or your connection comments on it, then, you know, you get to see it because, it's pretty smart. So I saw this post, and it was just a survey. This guy named David Platt. Again, I don't know him, but I'll post this in the comments. And it was just like, for designers, which is the best tool right now? It's a super generic question. I get it. But the funniest thing, well, it's funny to me, funny and annoying a little bit. And what I want to talk about is like, are fucking snobs just inherently, whoa, I said that wrong. You get where I'm going.
Yes,
are designers just like snobs now? What? And I don't want us to be snobs. I want us to be a little more open.
Everybody.
So let's just,
go ahead.
I get it. But look, I think there's a threshold in which you can be a snob that I will like judge you for being more of a snob than an actual designer. Or vice versa. And so the first comment was from somebody that I know who's honestly really intelligent guy named Peter Merholtz. And he says, what kind of design tools to accomplish what?
I saw that.
The options that he gave you, that this guy David gave you, were Sketch, Figma, and XD. So in my head, I read that comment and I was like, I mean, what all kinds of design, and maybe I'm the idiot here, but like there's a big similarity in terms of like the type of design you would do with any of these tools. It's not like one of them is like a PowerPoint, you know, and they're all for creating interfaces for the most part. And I honestly don't, and I have seen everybody use Figma for literally everything. But anyway, the guy's it's a survey asking a question. I feel like you could just answer it and maybe comment with some additional thoughts, but you go down them and they're just like, super silly. It's like people are like, you know, wait, he updated it. It used to say UI UX in the question, which I agree. I've been a snob about like those are different things, whatever. But I also recognize that like the industry as a whole uses this sort of shitty combo term, and like we should know what it means to an extent enough, in my opinion, that we can at least have a conversation. It's like there's this, I mean, butt in at any time because I'm just rambling here.
No, finish your thought.
There's this author named John McWhorter, and he's a linguist. And one of the things that he said, which I freaking kind of changed my mind in terms of like how much of a grammar Nazi. I may not be good at spelling, but I'm decent at grammar. Was basically, he was talking about, I think he used the term ebonics or whatever, but he would talk about how people would judge other people's dialects or whatever. And his point was, hey, you know what? They're not, that person isn't actually, talking to you, and the person that they are talking to understand what they're trying to convey. And that's actually the whole goal. That's the whole point of language and communication, is conveying an idea. And so if you get what the idea the person is making, like I get it, people use their instead of their, at the wrong time, and it's funny or whatever. I think we should be past the point where people actually comment publicly and correct them, but you get the point. And can you not just add to the dialogue in a constructive manner? Do you have to be, and then, so we're talking about design right now. And it's like, so all these comments are like, well, unfortunately, like there's so many new ones. I wish I had done a screenshot of some of them that I just thought were the most ridiculous. But
I read through it. No, like they were just ripping. Like they were just like ripping on the guy about like how it's like, and like you're stupid. You do use this for this, or you don't use anything at all, or what I mean. They were just being assholes.
Yeah. Well, then there's the people that chimed in and were like, well, I still use paper. You're like, God, I know you're smart and you're cool. Like, do you not literally use any of the, do you not have an opinion, period, about, using Sketch Figma.
You just hand the piece of
XD.
paper to the developer and they make the app, right? Like that's how it goes, right? No, it's one of those things. One, I'm with you. I've always hated the term UX. Like and I know it's funny since it's like
welcome
the name
to UX Weekly.
Exactly. It's like that's our. I've always hated UX. Welcome to UX Weekly. But no, because I feel like it's so generic that it could be anything, and so when it can be anything, that means no one has a fucking clue what it is that you do. Because it can be
especially if you're not actually a product or user experience designer. People outside of the field of user experience design are like, I have no idea what that means.
No, and it's like, and I remember too, there was a bunch of designers that were at Google Ventures, and they were just like, that's why we just call ourselves designer. Like we don't put anything on there. And then I was like, I'm going to start doing that. And then I did that, and then everyone thinks that you do print and that you do all this stuff and you make t-shirts and you do all this stuff.
I had the exact same scenario happen to me. There was a particular designer. I'm trying to think who it was. It was somebody that worked at like a really badass company. I think it may have been like Ryan Singer of like 37 Signals at the time or something. I think that may have been who it was. And of course he was like really cool, especially when 37 Signals was like the top shit. And that's like, the dude was badass, and he was like the head of design and this, and that. And it just said designer. And I was like, okay, that guy doesn't have to try to sell anybody. I was like, I want to try that. And so I did the same thing. And I mean, it didn't really impact me, that poorly, but people then did, like you said, like even have less of an idea what I designed. Like at least product designers or companies that needed UX designers knew what, kind of where I wanted to go or what my specialty was. But when I really got like, backlash for it was whenever I was working with my team at the time, or I don't know if it was like 15 or 20 people. And I was kind of doing that trendy thing. I feel like I was a little ahead. Definitely wasn't the first, where you go from like user experience designer to experience designer or product designer or whatever. And so I still kind of liked, even though it didn't really like have like, I don't know. I still like the idea of just designer, because I still think it's cool. And I think if you're badass and you just put designer, it's like Johnny Ives, he's just designer. You're like, badass. Well, I mentioned that. I mentioned that to my team, and it was widely hated. The idea, it was like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm much more than that. I'm like, okay, I thought it was kind of cool. Like I thought design means I can design anything. Like bring it to me, see what happens.
That's where I was going, because I feel like, it's like my role forever has been like, cool, if you need a t-shirt, I'll make you a t-shirt. You need business cards, I'll do that. You need an app, I'll do that. You need this, you need that. You need hardware, I'll design that. Like design anything. And like, if you are if I use the term UX designer, that means you create experiences with design for whatever it is that you're making. Yeah. And then what happens is it's like, oh no, I'm a UX designer, I only do wireframes. Or you're like, I only do interaction design, or
the worst.
Like, well, okay, then like, let's just get rid of the term like altogether. Like, it's like, just like, let's make it product, but then it's like, oh, well, I only do apps, I don't do web. It's like, well,
what?
Fuck.
Feedback we got a lot when we used the word product design was they thought that we were doing only physical products, like industrial physical product design. That's
when I do job listings for like a lead product designer or something, that's all I get is like mechanical engineers and people that like do all kinds of, actual physical hardware.
When I first saw that coming in, I was like, oh, this guy's an engineer and a designer? Sweet. And then, oh, no, wait, there's no like digital design in the realm of what this person can do or whatever.
Also tells you, kind of back to our goldfish thing at the very beginning of this whole thing, that people don't read. Like,
oh, that's true.
That might have been the title of the job listing, but when you read anything else underneath it, it's talking about the interface and this thing and these apps and this whatever that you're going to be working on, not some physical hardware product.
100%.
It'd be what it be.
Yeah, totally. And you and I kind of talked about this early on. We've had this domain for like over a decade, and we're getting this started, and I don't think either one of us have really used the word UX a lot in the past, handful of years. But we're re-embracing it because we've got a sweet domain, UX Weekly, and it is still widely searched. I mean, we did some research, and like people still do like use the term a lot, and there's not a lot of and shoot, whatever. I'm rambling on about it because we just talked shit about UX.
That's what I was just thinking. I was like, but it's like we have to like reel it back in for people that are getting started, because it's like it's not a bad thing. These are like the little tiny things in the world, just because it's
because
we've been
we're
doing
design snobs.
Exactly. This is our snobbery, where it's just like, is that a word? Snobbery.
I liked it. Just roll with it.
That where like the term actually makes a difference. It's kind of like how people are like, oh, I want my title to be this. Well, it's like, I just want my title to be, what I do. I want it to be like an advertisement should, and I want you to be able to see it and know exactly what I do. And when I say UX, you're like, cool, you must do this. And you're like, nope, try again. Like, that's all I want. I just want,
I feel like it works better than just the term designer.
Yeah, I don't think there's a right answer, honestly, unless you only do one thing. And if you only do iOS mobile app design, then there you go.
My opinion is that you use the word product designer, and people seem to still think a lot about physical products. You use the word UX designer, and people think about digital products. That's what I think.
I agree, but then what part of that digital product?
Well, dude, this is a whole nother topic, but like you should be able to do a little bit of all this shit.
100%.
I've interviewed people in the past that have come from agencies where they have literally a person to do, like, it's just there's the wireframe person, there's now I'm fucking up, but it's like the concept person, there's the interaction design person, the UX person, like all these people. Yep. I'm like, how do you guys make any money? You employ like 5 people to do what literally one person I feel like should be able to do. They even had like an information, like this person's, well, then also I think the thing that like in my head must happen. I mean, I haven't worked for these organizations, but it's like the game of phone or whatever you call it. It's like, hey, I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking, or I'm going to tell you what this product should be. Okay, cool. Hey, here's what this product should be. Oh, okay, cool. Hey. By the time the product actually gets created, the first person has to be like, is this the same project I was working on? No,
I feel like
crazy.
When I do go work for people, and a lot of my role has been taking over existing teams and trying to like get them into shape. And I've inherited that team that you just described like many times. But that's
mass firing.
Well, unfortunately, it does, but what it also does is like you find that person that's like, yeah, I can do all that, and like people they weren't getting that work at all, and they end up being like amazing. You know what I mean?
That's another good point. Like, how unfulfilling would it be to just have like assembly line production?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like you're
all
literally
I do is screw
on
the
factory,
and pass it on.
Yeah, it's horrible. Anyway, we'll end on that horrible negative note about how you don't want to work at a factory. You want to actually
let's end on a positive note, which is like, hey, embrace doing as much of the full process as you not only can do, but also want to do. It's way more fun. And that's what kind of back to one of the topics we were talking about. You can have more full ownership of the thing you're working on. But
I'll say it in a different way real quick, just before you sign off, is I think that there is extreme amounts of value in knowing how things work, even if you don't work on that piece of it. So like even from the
100 emoji right
even
now.
From like there goes my camera. Even from the development
just
side,
went off.
Knowing how it's coded, knowing how it all works. But anyway, I'll shut up since I don't have a camera now.
Well, it's a good thing we timed this to end about now. Hey, folks, thanks for joining us. Sorry, Ray's camera just went off, but I'm Stephen Ray. I am at Stephen Ray on most social networks.
I'm Ray Hernandez. I'm at RayDawg88, RAYDAWG 88, everywhere.
Yep. And UX Weekly is at UX Weekly pretty much everywhere. So hit us up. Please subscribe even if you don't want to and you're our friend. And holla at us. Make comment here and
Please.
DM us wherever you find us.
Please.
All right. Until next time.
Later.
Deuces.